What's up guys, Mizzo Frizzo here, and firstly I just want to say Happy New Year. I hope you are all doing very well, and I also want to say thank you to the very generous people who made donations to my channel via the super thanks function in YouTube. I appreciate it very much. It makes it easier to do what I do, and as a result I am very proud and very excited to bring you what is part 14 of my true first-person shooter tutorial series, but is also a standalone video for anyone who wants to implement this stuff, which what I'm going to show you in this tutorial is left-hand IK, so locking the left hand to your weapon, as well as adding some weapon sway. As you can see here, when I look around and move to the side, I've got some weapon sway and the left hand is following the weapon. And also, if I fire, I have some procedural recoil here. So none of this is animation. This is all procedural, and it looks very smooth and very nice and adds another level of realism to our project. So I'm very excited to show you this stuff today. Just before we get started, guys, I also want to mention that I have created a subreddit called Mizzo Frizzo Tutorials, and there is also a Facebook group called Mizzo Frizzo Tutorial Discussion. So I know that many of you don't use Facebook. I unfortunately have to use Facebook, so that one is there as well. But there's also the subreddit Mizzo Frizzo Tutorials. So if you want to get on there and share any problems that you're having for debugging, or you just want to share what you've created, I encourage you to search out that subreddit and join up. So without further ado, guys, let me show you how to do this. Alrighty guys, let's start by doing the left hand IK. We'll just do it for one weapon, so I'm going to do it for this assault rifle here. The very first thing we can do is find the skeleton of the weapon we want to do it with. So I'm going to open up my assault rifle B skeleton, and just I've got this left hand socket here which I made before, but I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to right click on the root and add a socket. I'm going to call it, say, left hand IK, all caps. It's just something easy to remember, which I can give it the same name on every weapon, so we don't need to keep searching for different socket names, much like when we made the barrel or muzzle socket. And I'm just going to put this about here, just under and to the left of where I want him to grip the weapon. This is the hand IK, so it's somewhere near the wrist, and we'll adjust this later on, so we'll leave this open for now. And the next thing we want to do is set up an interface for our animation blueprint to find that socket location. So what we're going to do, if you have followed along, you should have an interfaces folder in underscore main. I'm going to right click and go to blueprint interface, and I'm going to call this one BPI underscore character data. So this blueprint interface is going to be the main one that we use to basically get data from our character's blueprint. It's going to be used by our animation blueprint to get data from our character's blueprint. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm straight away going to name this first function get left hand IK, and it's going to have one output. It's going to be of type transform, and again I'm just going to call this left hand IK. You can call this whatever you want, left hand socket transform, whatever, but left hand IK, and it is type transform, so I'm going to know what it is. I'm going to compile and save that, and then in my characters blueprint I am going to click on class settings and interfaces over here, add that new interface that we just created, BPI character data, compile and save, and then here under interfaces you'll see that function get left hand IK. We can open this up. I'm going to make quite a bit of room here, and the first thing I'm going to do is get my current weapon I'm going to right click on this and convert it to a validated get. So we're going to check if we do have a weapon. If we do have a weapon, we're going to get the skeletal mesh component, which for me is weapon model. Get weapon model. And then we can get socket transform. And in socket name is going to be our left hand IK. And we also need to grab our body, our skeletal mesh, whatever we're using here is our body right here. I'm going to drag that out and I'm going to transform to bone space. Transform to bone space. The bone name here is going to be the right hand, which is hand underscore R. You have to make sure this is exactly what your right hand bone name is in your character skeletal mesh. We're also going to right click on this get socket transform and split it, and we're going to plug location into in position and rotation into in rotation, like so. And then we're going to make a transform from this. Make a transform, plug in the position and the rotation, like so. And then this return value is going to be the left hand IK that this function returns. Nice. Alrighty, let's go into our animation blueprint now. So I'm just going to find, probably the easiest way for me is in here. I'm going to browse to my anim class and open up my animation blueprint. And where we're going to be working is just in front of this layer blend per bone. So we're going to apply all of this stuff to the upper body, and we'll do it before this default slot right here. So what we need to find is a node called toBoneIK, and we also need to find one called fabric. We can plug these in. You get this local to component and then component to local nodes. And what we can do is drag off of this effector transform on the fabric node and promote that to a variable. And I'm just going to leave it as effector transform. We can also get that effector transform, or you could duplicate this one. And I'm going to right click and split the struct pin and plug the location into the effector location right here. There's a few things we need to change in these nodes. We can click on the toBoneIK node. What we need to do is change the IK bone to the left hand, hand underscore L. The effector location space will be bone space, and we can check take rotation from effector space, and effector target is going to be the left hand. Joint target location space, we need the parent bone space, and the joint target will be the left upper arm. All of this stuff needs to be exactly like so to work correctly. We also, in the fabric node, can make a few changes here. The effector target is going to be the right hand, and effector transform space is going to be bone space. Effector rotation source can be changed to no change. Preserve existing component space. The tip bone is going to be the left hand, and the root bone is going to be the left clavicle. Okay. Compile and save. You'll see he's doing some funky stuff here. We haven't actually got a weapon for him to grab onto yet, so pretty much ignore the preview here, but we do need to make a change to this joint target location. So the effector location is obviously 0. In here the default is going to be 0, but this is what we're setting in the in the blueprint interface function that we set up. So we're just going to select the toBoneIK here and just change. So you've got two transforms you'll see here, 2 transform widgets. I can't really locate the other one. Where is it? Should be, it's just kind of, I thought it might be hard to see, but I can't actually see it there. There's joint target location, so it's kind of hard to see there. There we go. I don't know where it was. I couldn't locate it, but you can see this other one here, and this is going to be the IK between the clavicle and the left hand, so basically the elbow. You can have a play around with this, as you will have a play around with the left hand IK socket on your weapon, but that's pretty much all we need to do in here. We just need to now grab this effector transform from our in the event graph from that blueprint interface. So you can drag off of the character reference and you can find the get left hand IK message. That's the blueprint interface right here. I'm going to plug it into an execution pin on the sequence, and then I'm going to set the effector transform as the left hand IK right there. And that should be all we need to do. If I see it's we can set up later to not do the IK if we don't have a weapon, for example, but I'm just going to grab this weapon, and if I press F8 to eject and grab the skeleton here, I can now adjust the left hand IK socket on the skeleton. Just going to, you can move this camera around and adjust the left hand IK to be exactly where you put it in your animations. Nice, that's pretty good. I haven't actually set up this animation to look good from third person. We're going to do a bit more of that together towards the end of this shoot, and we're going to take the realism with all the hand sway and the procedural recoil and some realistic poses for the animations. We're going to take our third person shooter to the next level. I'm very, very excited to show you guys this stuff. So let's go on to add some hand sway. The first thing we need to do is go back into our BPI character data, and we're going to add a new function, and we'll call it get hand sway data. Call it whatever you like. I'm going to call it this. We're going to need 3 outputs, all of type float. So if you change the first one to type float and then add 2 more, it should all be floats. The first one is going to be side movement, and the next one is going to be mouse X, and the next one mouse Y. Okay, we can compile and save and close that. We're not going to need that anymore. And then under interfaces over here, you've got this new function, get hand sway data. We're going to open that up, and we're going to promote each of these to a variable. Not a local variable, just a variable. Promote all these to a variable, and then back out to the event graph. I've got a lot of tabs open here. And we're going to do this on tick. So I'm just going to find tick. Here we go, event tick, there it was. Now, it's very rare that you want to do things on tick. It's not very performant if you're doing stuff on tick that doesn't need to be on tick. But this I kind of think is a rare example of something that should actually be done on tick. So we're going to set those variables that we just created on tick. And what we can do is get IA move, and you'll see under enhanced action values, I've actually got 2 here because I added the third person and the first person content. I might actually, just to eliminate any confusion here and the possibility of mistakes, what I'm going to do is on my event begin play here where I've added the input mapping context, I'm going to browse to that and then make sure this is the one that I'm using in the first person. I'm going to go to the third person folder, the inputs folder here, and I'm just going to delete that input folder. It shouldn't have any references because yeah, it's only the third person character. I'm going to delete that so that I've only got the one input action here because one of them is not being used. So now if I search for get IA move, you'll see under enhanced action values there's only one here. This is the action value outputted when you press any of the movement keys. I can split that and plug in the X here. I can do the same with the mouse. I can get mouse X, and this will be the one under mouse values, mouse X. Plug that in. Same with mouse Y, get mouse Y, mouse values. Plug that in. Nice. Now we just need to call that function in our animation blueprint. So go to your animation blueprints event graph, and instead of dragging in more lines, we're going to have quite a bit of stuff here. So I'm actually just going to get my character reference here, and then off of that get hand sway data message, like so. Grab an execution pin, plug it in, and then I'm going to highlight these two and collapse these to a function just to keep it neat in here, and I can call this calculate hand sway. Open this up, and off of the first one we're going to get a map range clamped, and the in range is going to be -1 to 1, and these values here you can play around with and customize. I'm going to make them -5 to 5. This is basically, this is basically a multiplier. It's going to multiply how much your hands sway and move around. Off of the return value we can get an finterp to, but this is not actually going to be the current, this is going to be the target, so plug that in there. And we're going to need a new variable in here. We can call it hand sway rotation. Whoops. Rotation. And that's going to be of type rotator. We can get that and split it. And this one is going to be the Y, I believe. Delta time, you can get delta seconds, and the interp speed, I'm going to make 5. Again, this is another figure that you can play around with. It's going to be basically how aggressive your hand sway is. So these will be sort of how far your hands will sway, and this will be how fast. Okay. Now that we've got this, we can duplicate it 2 more times. And I'm going to plug in these ones here, and I'm going to change the bottom one from +1 to -1. It's just going to be inverse. Then what we can do is make a rotator. Actually, we don't need to make a rotator. We can just set the hand sway rotation and split the struct bins like so. We'll also need to change which ones are plugged in here. So this one is going to be Z, and this one's going to be X. And then where you want to plug them in here is the same ones from here. So this one will be Y. This one will be Z, and this one will be X, like so. Nice. if we compile and save everything, that should be all set up. Grab a weapon. No, we just need to, sorry, we need to add the, we need to actually apply this to some bones. So we're going to go to the enum graph, and this is very important with the 2 bone IK. You want this to be before the 2 bone IK. If you put it after, the IK will not move with the rotation. So make sure before 2 bone IK. What we're going to do is grab, what we can do is just duplicate a transform modify bone like this one here, because it's got rotation already set up on it, just rotation, nothing else. If you didn't grab these transform modify bones, what you can just do is search for modify and grab a transform modify bone. You'll select it, and you'll up here under translation, you'll uncheck expose as pin. We don't need translation. We do need rotation, so you'll leave that one on, but you'll change rotation mode to add to existing, and scale, unexpose that as a pin, and alpha, unexpose that as a pin. So you've just got this 1 pin left rotation, and the rotation mode is set to add to existing. And then you can change the bone to the left hand, and since I've set this one up, I'm just going to use this one, and you can duplicate that and change the other one to the right hand. Plug these in here. Whoops. Grab your hand sway rotation, plug it in here, and now that should be all good to go. I'll grab a weapon, and I've got hand sway up and down, bit of rotation side to side, which you can see with my animation is quite nice. You could blend by your is aiming boolean and change the values for when you're aiming and when you're not aiming. You can also, you could do a lot of things. You could store floats within your weapon class that multiply the rotation. But as you can see here, it's working quite nicely with the left hand IK, which is staying right there on the weapon. Very good. Alright, let's add some procedural recoil. And the first thing we're going to need to do is create a new blueprint interface. So go into your interfaces folder, right click, blueprint interface, and I'm going to call this one AnimBP interface. This one is going to be added to our animation blueprint to be called from our character blueprint to kind of send data there or call a function over there, which is going to be our procedural recoil. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to rename the function interface function underscore recoil, and I'm going to add a few inputs here, all of type float. I'm actually going to add 5. Now this is going to be the floats that we pass from our weapon, so we can add these in our weapon master and then change them in each child actor in each weapon to pass through to this function to give our weapons different recoil behavior. So the first one I am going to call just recoil multiplier. I'm just going to call it multi for short, because I don't want to type multiplier over and over again. I'm going to call the next one side recoil multiplier, and I'm going to call the next one kickback multi, kick side multi, and kick up multi. So these first two are going to be rotation. The recoil is going to be how much the gun sort of rotates upwards when it kicks, and a little bit of rotation to the side. This is going to be how much it kicks back towards the player, this is going to be kicking to the side and kicking up. So kicking to the side and kicking up is not going to look super great on, for example, an assault rifle, but with these ones you might want to dial it up for, say, an Uzi or machine pistol, to give it a kind of, wayward recoil behavior. So yeah, that's all we need to do in here. We can compile and save that, and we are going to add this to our animation blueprints class settings. Over here, add the implemented interface nmbp int, compile and save that, and then in the event graph we can find interfaces over here and double click if recoil. I'm just going to add this in the event graph down here. You could collapse this to a function if you wanted to make things more organized, but I am just going to add the logic right here in the event graph. The first thing I'm going to do is take all of these inputs and promote them to local variables. So this is actually going to be a bit of a faff, but I'm going to copy the names here and then promote each one to a variable, and I can just leave the name as is like that. So yeah, I'll promote each one to a variable, like so. Plug all of these in. Nice, now I can get them whenever I like. I will also create a couple of other variables. Let's call one recoil rotation. That one's going to be a rotator. Let's create another one called recoil location. This one's going to be a vector, and this is going to move our weapon. And we'll also create one that's just called recoil of type transform, and I'm also going to duplicate that one and call this one recoil transform, also of type transform. Okay, so recoil rotation we are going to set here, and we're going to actually set it twice. The first one we are going to grab recoil transform and split it and just plug in the rotation here. And we are also going to get make rotator, and we're going to set recoil rotation off of this make rotator, which is going to be made up of a few multiplication nodes. So we'll get 3 multiplies, and we can plug these in here. And I'm also going to get random float in range. So we're going to add some randomness to our recoil, and I'm going to plug these in here, and then what I'm going to plug into these other nodes here are what we've brought over. So our recoil multiplier, recoil multi, and our side recoil multi we can plug into these other two. You can set this up however you like. You might want to create even more variables to have even more customization for each weapon's recoil behavior, but this is what I've found gives me a pretty decent amount of control over how each weapon behaves. You can also set these values however you like, or you can try copying what I've done. So this one is how much your weapon recoils up, so like rotates up when you fire. Again, you can change this with the multiplier as well, but so these are the numbers that I've found to be decent. I don't want, for example, my side rotation to be very high as standard, so if I just give my my weapon a side recoil multiplier of 1, it won't be too extreme. And then if I want to make the gun more wayward, I can make it 2 or 3 times this, whatever I want. That's pretty much the recoil rotation set up. We can now do a similar setup with the recoil location. So we're going to set it twice, and I can duplicate this recoil transform here and just plug in the location. And then we're also going to do pretty much the same thing with the location. Just going to move these over here, except this won't be a make rotator. This will be a make vector. And obviously these will be different plugins here as well. We are going to have the kickback multiplier is actually this middle one right here. So this we want maybe from -1 to -2. Depends how much you want the weapon kicking back. You want to make sure it doesn't kick back through the camera, for example, and start clipping through the weapon. The kick to the side is this top one here, which I might set to like a really small value. I really don't want the weapon kicking to the side very much at all. -0.1 to 0.1. And then the kick up is going to be this last one here, and I might make that 0.5 to 1. This is something that you might, for example, dial right up for a Desert Eagle or something, some kind of hand cannon, and you want it to kick up really high as well as kick back a lot and recoil a lot. Yeah, you can fiddle with these for each weapon, and once this is all set up here, you can just change the values in your weapon and test it and go from there. So now that all of this is set up, we are going to set recoil transform and split the struct pin, and the location will be the recoil location right here, and the rotation will be the recoil rotation right here. Nice. We're almost there. We also need to set our recoil and our recoil transform on event update animation. So what I'm going to do is just grab an execution pin to set recoil and recoil transform. And for recoil, we're going to use T interp2, interpolate transform, and the current is going to be recoil, and the target is going to be recoil transform. Delta time, we can get world delta seconds, and the interp speed I'm going to set as 25. We want this to be quite aggressive, but this is one of those figures that you can play around with and change yourself if you like. We are going to duplicate this and use this one here as well, except here the current will be our recoil transform and the target will be 0. So what you can do is just make a transform and leave these values as 0, and I might make the interp speed 15. The very last thing we need to do, well actually we need to call this in our character blueprint, but the last thing we need to do in our animation blueprint is apply this to some bones. So you can go to the anim graph, and right here before your 2-bone IK, what we can do is we want to apply it to the right hand. So we can duplicate this one that just already have the right hand selected, but we do want translation exposed, so we can expose translation as a pin, and we can change translation mode to add to existing. Okay, and then we can just grab the recoil transform and split it and plug the location into translation and the rotation into rotation. But I don't want this to just affect my right hand, because I also want for a rifle, for example, when the rifle butt is into the shoulder, I also want the shoulder and the upper body moving a little bit as well with this. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this one, and I'm going to change the bone to modify to, say, spine 4. So spine 4 and everything above it is also going to be affected by this. I can plug in the location and the rotation, but I don't want it to affect the spine as much as I do the hand, especially with regards to translation, because the hand can quite easily move its location, but if you're moving the spine bone's location, it can cause some kind of undesirable results. The back would start to deform because the spine is actually moving instead of just rotating. So what I might do is just multiply the location by a float, and I'm going to make it like 0.4 or something. Dial it way down. That should be all good there. All we need to do now is call this function in our character's blueprint. So what we can do is find our firing logic, and as part of our firing logic here, I'm just going to move this out of the way. This event graph is very disorganized. You can comment stuff, you can collapse stuff to functions if you like to make it more organized. I don't really bother with, when I'm doing this, I'm focusing on just the result. So what we're going to do is just, I think we need to get anim instance for the target for this, blueprint interface. So we'll grab our body and get anim instance. That's going to be our target. So we can, it was called anim BP recoil. There we go, IF recoil. So we can call that. We can call it here, and we can duplicate it up here and call it here. Like so. And let's just set up these values for our assault rifle. I'm just going to set them as 1. So very, very quickly, I am going to find my weapons folder and my weapon master, and I'm going to add these floats, and it's going to be recoil multi, and I'm going to duplicate this 4 times, and I do not want to type, so I'm going to copy them from my BPI right here. Uno momento por favor. Which one am I up to? I just did that one. Sorry about that. Recoil, side recoil, kick back, kick side, kick up, compile and save, and then in my BP assault rifle, in its class defaults, I have now got these floats over here, and I am going to set them as 1 for now. You can change these in each weapon to change its recoil behavior, but that should be absolutely everything. If I grab this weapon and fire, it's not doing anything. Why is it not doing anything? Calling that here. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to plug these in. These are all set to 0. That's why there's no recoil, because it's multiplying all of those calculations to 0. So I just want to grab my current weapon here, and I'm going to have to get all of these. So get recoil multi, and that's going to be these ones. This is going to start getting quite messy here. So what I might actually do is collapse this to a function. I might just, if I just collapse this to a function, and I'll just call it add recoil. And then I should be able to just do the same here. Add recoil, call function, plug in that self2 as a target, and then in add recoil I will grab my current weapon and recoil multi, get recoil multi, get side recoil multi, get kickback, get kick side, and get kick up. Nice. There we go. Sorry about that. That should be working now. There we go. It's got quite a lot of kicking up going on here. We can also have a look in the... it ran out of ammo. I also haven't got the pose set up with the rifle butt into the shoulder. We're going to do that together in a moment. But just quickly before I run out of ammo, I'm going to eject and have a look how it's affecting him. It's making him move a little bit. Very good. It is kicking up quite a bit. I probably want it to kick back more than kick up. So with these multipliers set to 1, we can kind of set up a base sort of recoil behavior. It's in the event graph, isn't it? Kick side, kick back, kick up 0.5 to 1. Yeah, I'm gonna make this more like 0.1 to 0.5. These are probably actually quite big as well. Yeah, it's up to you to fiddle with these figures to get it behaving how you like. So it's still like quite erratic. I might want to tighten this up for an assault rifle. You know, and you can just do this through your assault rifle BP. You can change, you know, for example, you might change all of the side stuff to 0.5 to really dial that back, and you might take the kickback multiplier a little bit higher, and the recoil multiplier, you know, keep the kickback and the recoil high and turn everything else down, and then that should work. That should change its behavior. And it has. It's kicking up and it's kicking back, but it's not kicking to the side or rotating to the side very much. Nice, really nice. Alright guys, I want to show you how to do some nice realistic posing with a nice realistic weapon. So if you haven't got it already, what you can do is head to the Unreal Marketplace, and you can find what's called the FPS Weapons Bundle. It's going to be here in my library, FPS weapons bundle. So find this one and add it to your project. And once that's added to your project, you'll find this FPS weapons bundle folder. And the weapon I'm going to use is in weapons, meshes, AR4, and you'll find this AR4X skeletal mesh. Now, I'm not going to go through the steps of creating a new weapon blueprint with this skeletal mesh. I've already gone through that with you before. I'm just going to show you how to pose your character using this skeletal mesh. You can go ahead and create a socket and everything, and the weapon blueprint and the pickup blueprint, and change all the class defaults in the weapon blueprint and the pickup blueprint if you want to actually implement this as a weapon. I do think it looks quite nice. But I'm just going to be going through how to pose with the actual skeletal mesh. So you will need a socket. I can find my character's body and go to the skeleton, and as you can see here, I've already created a socket on the right hand. I've just called it AR4X socket, but what we want is an actual pose. So what I'm going to do is in our anim starter pack folder, where is it, anim starter pack, and our UE5 retargeted animations, I am going to find idle rifle iron sights, and I'm going to pause this on the first frame, and then up here click create asset, create animation from the current pose. And in my main and animations, I have created a folder called AR4X anims. I'm just going to call this one UE5 underscore AR4X underscore base pose, and create that one. And this, you can see, has opened up that animation. If I hit play, this is just a single frame animation, so it's just a pose like so. What I am then going to do is find that folder right here, and I'm going to duplicate and retarget this animation using my mani to metahuman retargeter. I'm going to change the folder to that folder, AR4X anims, and hit retarget. And now if I open this up, what I've got is a single frame animation, a base pose for my metahuman right here. Now we are going to make some changes to this base pose, but first we're just going to fine tune the socket a little bit. So if I go back to my skeleton, what I can do is change my preview animation to my AR4X base pose like so. And then with regards to the socket location, all I'm going to worry about is the right hand. So I'm going to select my socket location and start fiddling around with this position. I want the index finger to go through the trigger guard, and I also want this to rest in the crook of his thumb here, and I want the top of the weapon resting over the top of his thumb like so. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want it resting in his hand in quite a nice, comfortable looking, realistic way. And then what we're going to do after this is play with the fingers a little bit to make it look even better. But we just want it resting on the top of his hand like so, and into his hand, the palm of his hand, so it could be a little bit better here, I think. Just bear with me here. I think that's pretty good like that. Like I said, doesn't have to be perfect, but this position in here is mainly what we're worried about. I'm just going to whack that back in there. To hell with a little bit of clipping through the hand. You're not going to see it. It's on the inside of his thumb. So yeah, that's good right there. And that's all we need to do in here. We've fiddled with the socket. Now what we're going to do is change this pose a little bit. So it's in his hand, but obviously his fingers aren't, fighting the camera speed a little bit, his fingers aren't grabbing the grip, and this hand is nowhere near the front, and even if it was, the fingers were not grabbing or anything like that. So we're just going to fix this up now. If you can see the whole hierarchy of the skeleton here, you just want to click character and bones and change it to selected only, and then we're just going to select what we want to change over here in the skeleton tree. So first thing I'm going to do is find his right hand, his lower arm right, and his upper arm right, and I'm going to change this to global space right here, and I'm going to start making the weapon sort of straight and line up nicely with his shoulder. And what I can do is I can also try and minimize this kinking on the wrist here. That's actually pretty good like that, except there's a bit of clipping here, so it's going to be hard to eliminate all this kinking on the wrist. I'll be honest, it's about the scale of the weapon. But we do want the butt of the rifle sticking into his shoulder, so we're going to put it about there. And then what I can do is change the upper arm to make the gun nice and level. You can use this plane that he's standing on as a reference to get this nice and level, like so. That's pretty good. You then want to go on to fiddle with the fingers here and make this look really nice. I am not going to go super into detail in front of you here and show you the whole process. I'll just show you sort of what you want to do and give you a couple of tips and hints here. You're going to have to do this yourself anyway, and you're going to want to make it look however you want to make it look. But when you're playing with the fingers, you almost certainly want to change this from the global space to the object space so that you don't deform the fingers too much. And you might even want to change the scale of the fingers. So let's say I've got his thumb like so on the weapon here. And let's say he's got kind of sausage fingers going on with some of his fingers, so you might want to play with the scale. And if you play with the first thumb joint, it's the parent of the second and the third. So if I change this scale, it would actually change the scale of the whole thumb. Just going to turn scale snapping off. So you can see that changing the scale of his whole thumb. Maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you just want to change the second and the third. So you might want to just, scale down. Oh, that's the length. There's thumb 3. It's broken down into, that's thumb 3 right there. It's broken down into a lot of other things here. I just like to mess with the main ones. So, thumb 1R, thumb 2R, thumb 3R. And I do think that his fingers are a little bit fat. I've kind of made a hash of his thumb there. It doesn't look great anymore. But once again, this is just up to you guys to play with to make it look however you want to make it look. And you'll go through and you'll grab each finger and metatarsal and make it look really nice. So you might start with the metacarpal and put this here, wrap his hand around the grip. And also with the left hand, one thing you want to note is that the wrist is kind of deformed a little bit from this pose from the mannequin, is not very aligned with his forearm. It's not very natural looking. So you might want to grab the left hand and just make it look a bit more natural like that. and then start to place it under the weapon here to grab it. So what you want to do is play with the upper arm and the lower arm to get his hand more or less into position, and I want his hand to be sitting a bit further forward on the weapon than this, so I might point his upper arm a bit more in and forward, and then use the lower arm to get the position. And I might change this to global space right here just to make things a little bit easier, and I'll put his hand into position like so. That looks pretty good, and then I'll start wrapping his fingers around. So you know, I might start with the thumb, and obviously we want this last joint to be it's hard for me to tell which ones. Oh, I've still got this on global space, which I said you don't want to do with fingers. You want to change this to object space. That's why I was having a bit of trouble there working out which way to rotate it. Might do it like that, and then you'll fiddle with his hand, wrap all his fingers around the weapon so it looks nice and grippy, and that would pretty much be it. If I switch over to my other project now where I've already set this up, I'll sort of show you what the end result looks like. But basically you want to take this pose and you want to put it into your animation blueprint in the anim graph. You'll go into whatever weapon you're adding. So if you've added the AR4X as a new weapon, you might add a new pin. How do we add a new pin? Add blend pin. You know, add AR4X to weapon int 3, and then you would just go in to wherever you have it. We are going to do procedural aiming, by the way. It's what I'm going to add next. But yeah, so you would change your assault rifle idle or your AR4X idle to this base pose that we've just created. Just before we finish up, guys, I want to show you one last thing which is going to end all of your pitch and spine rotation woes. I'm sorry that we put so much work into the spine rotation for me to just change things now, but I have discovered a much better way to set it up. So what we're going to do, instead of setting our pitch on our spine bones from all of the mouse input here, we still are going to do our aiming dead zone off of our mouse, but here where we are not aiming, for example, and we're just setting the pitch, we do not need any of this functionality that just sets the pitch. We can do it all in our animation blueprint by going to the event graph, and what we can do, instead of setting pitch off of pitch here, I am just going to move this out here so you can see clearly what we're doing. All we actually need to do is get our character reference, get controller rotation, split the struct pin, and then we're going to use the Y here on the control rotation. The first thing we're going to do is minus the Y off of 360. So 360 minus the Y. The next thing we're going to do is multiply this by -1. And the last thing we're going to do is check if it's greater than 180. And then I'm going to use this to select float, plug this into A and into B, and then I'm going to divide this by the number of spine bones that I'm rotating, which for me is 5, and plug that in. So as you can see now, we're setting pitch off of just these calculations right here, and if I hit play, the hands are following the camera just as they were before. This is a much less hacky way of making this work. this is now tied to our camera rotation instead of doing all these calculations on the mouse input. So this is a much better way of making this work. Alrighty guys, I'm just going to switch to my other project and show you what these the poses look like on the AR4X. Alrighty, so as you can see here, I've got my AR4X set up as a full blueprint. It has left hand IK, it has weapon sway and procedural recoil, and I'm just going to turn the volume down here, and if I hit F8 to eject, you'll see that this pose looks quite good, quite natural. Rifle butt is in against the shoulder. The recoil is affecting his upper body as well, so he's got a bit of jerking here. So if you were to replicate this and you were to look at this character, he is now pretty much a fully fledged true first person character with a full character model, weapon, recoil, hand sway, bullet casings, ammo. We're getting very close to completion here, guys. I think what we've made is really quite nice. I am going to go on to show you procedural aiming down the sights as well, but that's it for today, guys. I'm very excited with what we've done here. I'm very excited to bring you this stuff and add a bit more realism and professionalism to our true first-person shooter project. If this video has been of any use or value to you whatsoever, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.